some of the Pharisees said, well, no, this man is not from God, this Jesus, for he does not keep the Sabbath. Wow. Doesn't matter that there's a blind guy who now can see, he doesn't keep the Sabbath. This guy is so in his little cocoon of understanding, it doesn't fit, and he just says, no, I reject it. I remember back in the 90s, back when I used to listen to Christian radio, Sarah. I poke at Sarah because I've started listening to, what is it, 107.1? Yeah. How many of you happened to be here the other night when that Taylor and Jen duo were here? Oh man, that was so much fun, and I didn't get to say hello to them. That is upcoming, okay? Well, anyway, back in the 90s, when we listened to Christian radio in Pennsylvania, Moody Broadcasting was going to air this live debate between a Christian theologian and a renowned atheist. And it was going to be on at a certain time. It was going to be like 90 minutes, and I got to listen to this. And as it was coming closer, I thought, I wonder if this guy's going to have I love to know, what do the atheists really believe? They're probably going to have some good arguments, so I want to hear. So the only argument I remember before I turned it off was, that they both made these opening statements, and they were fine. And then the atheists referred to Acts chapter 1 when Jesus ascended up into heaven and a cloud hid him from their sight. And his argument was, back then, they didn't understand that we had an atmosphere and that up so far, there's no oxygen and you can't breathe. They didn't understand that back then. Well, now we know that, and that there's space. And if you go up 3 miles in the air, you can't breathe anymore. And so obviously that's not true because, he couldn't go up. Jesus couldn't breathe. That was his argument. And I remember thinking, really? That's your argument? That is the lamest argument I have ever heard. If God came from heaven, he can go back right in. Oh, well, he made that mud on the Sabbath, so therefore he's not from God, and it's not, he's a sinner. It's not true. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. Sometimes we fit reality to our understanding and not to God's his infinity, his omnipotence, his eternity. And we have to lift our eyes up and see that God is bigger than our understanding. Because the others asked, how can a sinner perform such signs? So they were divided. So amongst the Pharisees, you had your very skeptical ones, and then you had your ones who thought, well, this happened, God must be involved. So verse 17, then they turned again to the blind man. What have you to say about him? It was your eyes he opened. The man replied, he is a prophet. Again, speaking of Jesus. They still did not believe that he'd been blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. So while these guys were lost in plain sight, the parents come. I would imagine they were kind of excited, kind of happy that Jesus healed their son could see, but the Pharisees robbed them of their joy. They suck the happiness out of the situation. Is this your son, they asked? Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it he can now see? Well, we know he's our son, the parents answered. We know that he was born blind, but how he can see now or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He's of age. He will speak for himself. Minimal witnesses, right? Minimal. They weren't there, so they don't really know. But John includes this for us, that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah, they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. But they had already made up their mind. They had already decided. They had this box that they saw life in. And when I keep my box on like this, I can't even see any of you. There is nobody in this room, only me. That's what these guys did. So they bring the guy back. Verse 24, a second time, they summoned the man. And this is where we see that they're blind to what threatens their status quo. They're blind to it. We see this all the time in life and leadership, in society and in families. Whatever threatens somebody's power, comfort, security, whatever threatens that, they don't want to hear about it. They're blind to it, to the truthfulness or the reality of it. A second time they summoned the man who'd been born blind. Give glory to God by telling the truth, they said. We know this man is a sinner, speaking of Jesus. And here's the witness again. Here's his lesson to us on how to witness for Jesus. He replied, whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. There's a lot in the Bible that this is what it says, but we don't really know. We receive it, again, by faith. But he says, I don't know. One thing I do know, here's what I do know. I was blind, but now I see. What a beautiful statement. Then they asked him, what did he do to you? How did he